Good morning, guys. Today we thought we would do a video on making turnscrews. So we call them turnscrews, right? It's a really silly word because people call them screwdrivers, we call them turnscrews, but we don't call the screws screws, we call the screws pins. So it's all a bit silly, but that's where we're at. I've got a few favourites which I'll go through, which I use every day. Some of these I've had for upwards of 15 years. Some of them are nigh on disposable. You kind of will make it for a one-off job and then never use it again. So in essence, there's two main types. And when I say two main types, they're made exactly the same way. But what we do is we have what we call slave pins. So in essence, what it is a pin with a big fat slot. And you use that while you're actually working on the gun. It's so worth the time if you're going to be doing a lot of work on a gun to make slave pins up. If you're doing a restoration, it's a little bit of a pain because you're going to be using that pin and you might not have to use it again. It might just sit in your toolbox forever. But the point being is that if you've got a nice thin slot and you're doing something like regulating ejectors, regulating trigger pull, doing something that involves putting the gun together and taking it apart, you don't really want to be using that pin with the nice little thin slot on it. You want to have a big fat one that you can use and just put in and out, and it takes the time away from having to do it. So when it comes to turnscrews themselves, the only real difference is they're just a lot fatter. So when we're building a new gun, we use a slot saw like this, and quite simply, that's two plates with a ground down hacksaw blade sandwiched in the middle. So this is about 12 thousandths. You can do them however you want. British and European guns tend to be a lot thinner in the slots. There's a few reasons for it. One is because it looks really clean and really nice when you've got that little tiny thin slot. The other reason is it's almost like a security thing because you know that someone without the right tools just isn't going to be able to take it apart. If you build a gun and, for instance, it comes back in a couple of years with a problem and all the screws are all chewed up and they've been bodged and smashed up and burred, someone else has been in there and been playing with it. So we use their very, very thin slots. So they're not really suitable for going in and out, in and out, in and out. They really want to be in and done. So make yourself slave pins. I'm just going to grab some for some Mausers just so you can see the difference, just so you can kind of, put a visual to what I'm trying to say. Right, so here's a really, really good example of why the slave pins are so important when you're working on the gun. So this isn't actually the pin for this gun, but it's a really good reference. This is one I think I actually, definitely. It's actually a scrap one. I've cut the slot slightly over to one side, so it's scrap. It's not going to be used. But basically, a pin like this is really, really difficult to put in and out, and it's because the way we fit these, we actually curve them to match the back of the guard. So again, this isn't the actual pin for this gun, but you can kind of get an idea of how that fits. Something like that. And now to put that in and out, we have this turnscrew, and I actually made this turnscrew. So it doesn't look much, but I actually made this while I was still at Wesley's. So I've had this turnscrew for like 15, 16 years, and it's still going super, super strong. The only thing that's really unique about it is the actual top of the blade is curved, which means that, it matches the curvature of that pin itself. And all I'm trying to really get at is that if that's going in there and it's all curved and you're getting it in and you're putting a lot of force into getting in and out, you're just going to splay that pin up. So for the time you're working on it, the best thing to do is actually just have a slave pin that goes in, that's got a big fat head on it and a big fat slot. That way, when you get your big fat turnscrew, that can go in and you can put it in, you can go in, out all the time, and you're not going to be worried about damaging it. So gone off on a little bit of a tangent there, but the point being is that slave pins are so vitally important. I can't believe, I can't believe people don't use them, and there's a lot of people that don't use them. And it's kind of, all right, how long is it going to take you to make that? It's going to take you an extra half an hour, but that half an hour is going to save doing loads of damage to the gun. And a lot of guns, to be fair, you'll find that, for instance, if you're using a Mauser style gun, slave pins will fit near enough all the Mauser style guns. So you knock them up and then you've got them, you can use them all the time. So slave pins, super, super important. But the bottom line is we have two sort of sets of turn screws. We have the ones that are used for slave pins. These are my go-to ones. The only real difference is the ends of them aren't finely ground. They're quite fat. And also these ones that are used with the slave pins tend to be quite short. It's just how I like them. I find if they're short, because you're not with this, because it's got a big fat slot on it. It's not like you're having to really crank it to get it tight. You can just kind of, and it's going to be nice and snug. So yeah, they're quite short. They're quite fat, and they're perfect for slave pins. So then, by contrast, when you come to finish and when you come to finish the pin, if you're building the gun, or if you're working on a gun that's newish or not been worked on that much, it's probably going to have a really thin slot in the pin. So then we come on to the other style of turn screw. This one is obviously seen some action. This would have been about that long when it was made, but years and years and years of grinding has left it down here. So I'll think about making a new one. But this is ground near enough to a blade. This is the turn screw I made at Purdy. This is the type we're going to emulate today, which is 1/4 of an inch in width. What you will find is with English British guns that most of the pins tend to circle around standard imperial sizes. So you'll see lots of, 1/8, 3/8, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, etc., etc. So when you make a turn screw, it's not going to be for one gun. Every now and then you'll have a really oddball that you have to make one for, but these turn screws, every one I have here has quite literally been used on hundreds of different guns. So you start off with your base measurement. Like I say, for this one's going to be 1/4 inch, but as the years go by, you might just be like, oh, I need to use on something else, and just whip a 20th off the side here and there and then regrind it. And like I say, this particular one was about that long when it was made, and it's just been changed and reground until it's like that. So, but yeah,